campus is situated at Jharkhand, near Limri on Ahmedabad-Rajkot highway. Away from the hustle of the city, in arms of nature, which provide more suitable environment for yoga education. Widely spread over more than 100 acres of land, the campus has all the facilities and built-in infrastructure. 12 classrooms, 2 yoga halls, large conference hall, auditorium, facilities for practice of Shatkarmas, hostel facility for boys with more than 36 rooms, separate hostel building for girls, staff quarters, rich library with rare ancient scriptures and reading room, Annapurna canteen with dining hall serving healthy food, placement cell, collegiate women development cell CWDC, internal complaint cell ICC, hospital for outdoor and indoor patients, exhibition on yogic science, Gaushala, and a magnificent temple. Along with the huge campus at Jharkhand, the university has its administrative headquarters at SG Highway, Ahmedabad. Specially designed short-term diploma, degree, master degree, and PhD courses for Indian and foreign students. Qualified and learned faculties provides the right mix of theoretical and practical knowledge, making the journey of learning a soulful experience. Lakulish Yoga University, pledged to promote and propagate the essence of yoga all across the world. It offers the means to attain complete self-realization. Lakulish Yoga University educates, promotes and propagates the knowledge and practice of the ancient science of yoga, leading to a balance between physical and mental well-being. Established on 23rd May 2013, Lakulish Yoga University has become one of the most sought-after destination for young generation who wish to educate oneself in the field of yoga. The campus is situated at Jharkhand, near Limri on Ahmedabad-Rajkot highway. Away from the hustle of the city, in arms of nature, which provide more suitable environment for yoga education. Widely spread over more than 100 acres of land, the campus has all the facilities and built-in infrastructure. 12 classrooms, 2 yoga halls, large conference hall, auditorium, facilities for practice of Shatkarmas, hostel facility for boys with more than 36 rooms. Separate hostel building for girls. Staff quarters. Rich library with rare ancient scriptures and reading room. Annapurna canteen with dining hall serving healthy food. Placement cell. Collegiate Women Development Cell CWDC. Internal Complaint Cell ICC. Hospital for outdoor and indoor patients. Exhibition on yogic science. Gaushala. And a magnificent temple. Along with the huge campus at Jharkhand, the university has its administrative headquarters at SG Highway, Ahmedabad. Specially designed short-term diploma, degree, master degree and PhD courses for Indian and foreign students. Qualified and learned faculties provides the right mix of theoretical and practical knowledge, making the journey of learning a soulful experience. Lakulish Yoga University, pledged to promote and propagate the essence of yoga all across the world. Yoga. It offers the means to attain complete self-realization. Lakulish Yoga University educates, promotes and propagates the knowledge and practice of the ancient science of yoga, leading to a balance between physical and mental well-being. Established on 23rd May 2000,
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Tresha Rathod, a student of Lakulish Yoga University and your moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of Lakulish Yoga University, I welcome you all to the national webinar on therapeutic fasting in association with Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy. Lakulish Yoga University educates, promotes, and propagates the knowledge and practice of the ancient science of yoga, leading to a balance between physical and mental well being. Strategically located in an area recognized as an educational hub, Lakulish Yoga University is located at SG Highway, Ahmedabad. Lakulish Yoga University offer diverse courses in yoga, starting from certificate courses to diploma and degree courses, a 3 years bachelor's program and 2 years master's program. Helps the students cultivating towards the ancient heritage of yoga. Students can also pursue in-depth education in PhD in Karma Gyan Bhakti Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga. The best of all medicine is resting and fasting. It is the first principle of medicine. When the body is provided with the requirements of health, including appropriate diet, environment, activity, and psychology, optimum health can be maintained. If these requirements are not adequately provided, health will be compromised. Often, the best means of facilitating the restoration of health is therapeutic fasting. It allows the body to create a unique physiological healing response that is unparalleled. Fasting has surged in popularity over the new millennium. Much of its newfound enthusiasm has been driven by a growing public perception that fasting may be beneficial for many aspects of human health. Therapeutic fasting is defined as the complete abstinence from all substances except pure water in an environment of complete rest. Despite the purported health benefits of fasting, it remains somewhat foreign to conventional medical practices. Although this situation is not exactly new, fasting has historically fallen in and out of fashion in its relationship to medicine. As Mark Twain may have said, history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. To understand why and how fasting may be applicable as a therapy, to enhance our health and an area of diseases, let's welcome our guest speakers for today's webinar, Dr. Raghvendra Mohan Rao and Dr. Vijaykumar P.S., the pioneers in the field of yoga, naturopathy, and holistic health sciences. Let's move ahead to the first session of the day, fasting and its therapeutic applications with Dr. Raghvendra Mohan Rao. He is the director of Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy, Ministry of AYUSH, Government of India. He completed his bachelor's degree in naturopathy and yogic sciences with second rank from Mangalore University in 1998. He joined SVYASA as a research fellow in 1998 and went on to become an assistant professor. He has completed several research projects in rheumatoid arthritis, prediabetes, diabetes, and CVD risk prevention using both yoga and naturopathy interventions at SVYASA University, MS Ramaiah Hospital, HCC Bangalore Institute of Oncology. He has 89 international research publications and one international book chapter. He is a member of the AYUSH research portal, Government of India. He has won several awards such as Sushila Thakur Prakriti Mender Prize in 2001 by Epicon, Manomani Rudraya Award from SVYASA for Best Thesis, and ESCO Concur Cancer Foundation Merit Award in 2012 by American Society of Clinical Oncology. He has conducted workshops in Melbourne and Malaysia in UICC Congress. Let's start the session. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me just share my screen. Can you help me to enable me to share my screen, please?
Yes, sir.
I'm not able to share my screen as yet.
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
Yeah. Okay. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to share my views on therapeutic effects of fasting today with all of you. Request participants to kindly mute their audio. I think some participant has his audio on, and it's disturbing the entire program. So request them to kindly mute your audio, please. Yeah, thank you. So today I'm going to start my talk on therapeutic effects of fasting. So as you know, when you talk about fasting, we talk about the Panchamahabhuta theories, because we talk about the causation of disease, the causation of life, that our whole body is made up of these Panchamahabhutas. And fasting, where you don't take anything, where there's complete emptiness, belongs to the ether principle or the air or the sky principle. Okay, it signifies emptiness, it signifies relaxation, it signifies calmness, which helps in bringing about a healing capacity. So all of us know that because of the fire, because of the air, because of the water, because of the earth, several metabolic functions in your body take place. Okay, the vata is a very important principle among the doshas, which are important in the process of metabolism, both anabolism as well as catabolism. It is a moving force. Whereas ether is the one which is the brake for that particular moving force. It helps in slowing down this metabolism. So this is a very, very important principle. And as we go ahead, we learn why this is so and why it is important. So when you look at fasting, in terms of naturopathy, because it's a very, very important aspect of naturopathy treatment, and everything is based upon the principles of naturopathy is really based upon fasting. So when you talk about principles of naturopathy, we talk about unity of disease and unity of cure. We say the cause of the disease is only one. There can be many diseases, but the cause is same. And what are the causes? It is lowered vitality, it is abnormal composition of blood and lymph, accumulation of toxins and morbid matter or foreign matter inside the body. And this was proposed by Louis Kuhne, was a very, very great naturopath from Europe, especially from Belgium, and he brought out a book called Neo Naturopathy, where he did a company of 133 case studies, where he could heal the patients who are suffering from acne vulgaris to smallpox to filariasis to malaria, etc., through naturopathy alone. So a lot of things have been there in this particular book, and it's really even a prized possession to most of the naturopaths even today. Let us look at what are principles of naturopathy and why we need to understand them, because this forms the entire background of fasting. So if you really want to understand the therapeutic effects of fasting, you should know why we need to do fasting first. Okay, when you talk about unity of disease and unity of cure, we say that the cause of the disease is same for most of them. For example, you look at living the bacterial infections, you look at the non-communicable diseases, like you look at cardiac disease, you look at obesity, you look at metabolic syndrome, you look at any of these kind of diseases, the cause is nothing but inflammation in the inside the body. Okay, so it is the cause is basically to do with one's lifestyle. So that's why we call it as unity of disease, and also we call it as unity of cure because it takes one to correct that particular lifestyle to bring back the body to normalcy. So we'll go to these things one by one later on. Second one is the foreign matter theory, that's proponent by Louis Kuhne, toxemia theory proponent by J.H. Tilden. Okay, where toxins are produced in the blood or present in the blood. These are toxins which are end products of metabolism, as well as exogenous toxins from parasites, bacteria, viruses, etc. Okay, so detoxification and elimination of toxins becomes the cure for most of the diseases in naturopathy. And this is done primarily by the process of fasting. Now, when you look at naturopathy, we have two important aspects to understand. So, for example, you may have a cough, you may have a cold, you may have a small diarrhea. Okay, so aim of this body is to remove the offending organism from its milieu or from its environment. For example, if you have a tuberculosis, for example, an infection called tuberculosis, the tubercle bacilli is very, very strong. It has got a very thick cell membrane. The immune cells cannot go and destroy the cell membrane. It can be only destroyed by drugs. So what does the body do? When you are not able to kill the microorganism, you contain the organism. So it contains the organism in one portion of the lung. Similarly, to do with the filariasis, it contains the filarial worm and the larvae inside your lymph nodes. If you can't kill, you contain. That's the ability of the immune system to take care of the microorganism or the pathogen which causes the harm. So what does these microorganisms causes? Whenever there's a microorganism enters into your body, the body fights against the microorganism. There is a resulting inflammation. There is a resulting cellular damage. Okay, and the ability of this inflammation is to bring the immune cells to the particular site and kill the offending microorganism. So this is acute inflammation is always a protective in nature. Okay, it is protective in nature, and this is called as the healing crisis. So if you, for example, if you take small children, they usually get frequent coughs and colds. They also get frequent diarrhea. and you start medicating them with antibiotics right from the childhood, they don't get immunologically primed. Okay, so this can become a problem later on. They may get Crohn's disease, they may get IBD later on, or they may get asthma later on. So healing crisis is the ability of the body to remove the offending microorganism, at the same time provides the opportunity for the body to learn from the exposure to the particular antigen or the bacteria or virus. So this you understand. So later on, if you are suppressing this, this becomes a chronic disease. Okay, suppression of acute disease leads to chronic diseases, leads to chronic inflammation, and this is like especially a cardiovascular disease, cancer, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's disease in the elderly, neurological diseases, depression. All these are examples of disease crisis. When there is low-grade inflammation persisting over a longer period of time, this can lead to a disease condition, and this is called disease crisis. So now what we have to do here is we don't suppress the acute inflammation. We encourage the acute inflammation in naturopathy by using water baths, by using cold sponging, maintain the fever. At the same time, allow the fever to subside by itself, trying to develop the immune response against a particular pathogen so that immune resilience is achieved. Okay. What do you mean by lowered vitality? So whenever I say lowered vitality, it is the inability of the body to repair any damage caused due to injury. The damage may be caused due to small tobacco smoking, like you take tobacco, you smoke tobacco, you have harmful products inside the tobacco smoke which enter into the lungs and damage the lung tissues. Okay, but the body has its own repair capacity to repair the particular damage. So how does this damage happen? These toxins, these products will enter into the cell. They enter into DNA of the cell, destroy the DNA of the cell, or break the DNA of the cell, and there is inherent DNA repair mechanism within the cell which repair the particular damage, and cells become normal once again. Okay, this is called repair capacity of the body, or it's also called vitality. So you may ask, what is what? How do you really talk about vitality? Or how is it that you can differentiate somebody's vitality from somebody else? Now, one is with respect to tobacco smoking itself. We have seen people who smoke for 20, 30 damn years don't get cancer. We have seen people who smoke for 4 or 5 years still get cancer. This is because these people who smoke for 20, 30 years are born with very good repair genes which can repair the damage, and therefore they don't get cancer because of the smoking also. Whereas other people who have deficient repair capacity, they're not endowed with those kind of genes, will usually get cancer. This is very, very important. Okay, this is called vitality of a person. Similarly, in COVID also you must have seen most of them, some people are, most of them, 80% of them are asymptomatic, 20% of them have symptomatic, and 10% of them go into a severe form of disease among this 20%. So why is this? Because of lower vitality again. Okay, why is it asymptomatic in most of them? Because the body's immune system is able to clear the virus as fast as possible from the body without it causing any damage to the organ systems inside the body. So this is what you mean by vitality. Okay, and as you grow older, you get exposed to environmental toxins, you get exposed to carcinogens which are there in the food like pesticides and other things, and these can cause damage to the cells all along. And you have metabolism. There's always some sort of cell turnover which happens inside your body. The cells are already dividing inside the body, constantly dividing inside the body to replenish new cells. The old cells die, the new cells come up. Okay, and this the process of cell division can lead to somatic mutations, which can also cause cancer. So we know the cause of cancer in 40% of the population, but in 60%, these are random somatic mutations which you don't know why, which can cause cancer. For example, I have seen patients who are completely vegetarian, who are thin, who are not obese, who always do fasting, who pray to God, who do yoga, who do everything. In spite of everything, they also get cancer. And they ask, why me? Okay, because this mutation is something which is random, it's occurred by chance, and you are endowed with cancer. Okay, so these are also some important things which you should understand. So the epigenetic changes also are very important, which can cause changes in the genes. Okay, and inflammation is a very important hallmark of all the diseases inside the body, and activation of these inflammatory mediators like NF, kappa B, STERT, TNF, all these things can lead to problems or lower vitality in the long run. As you grow older, you have to understand that as you grow older, you get most of these diseases, your cardiovascular diseases, your cancer, your diabetes, everything starts coming up after 40 years of age. So you are starting to age. As you start to age, your immune system also starts to age. You have more susceptibility to infections. You have chance of getting autoimmune diseases, chance of getting cancers as well. So Malnutrition, poor nutritional health can also lead to a problem. Okay, so loss of immune resilience is what is called lowered vitality as you grow older. Simple example was a study which I had done in cancer patients while I was there at HCG Bangalore Institute of Oncology. So we looked at patients' vitality status. So the vitality can be measured as a marker of inflammation. The platelet lymphocyte ratio, neutrophil lymphocyte ratio is a very important hallmark of inflammation. And we looked at that status in patients who are undergoing chemotherapy. These are patients with lung, breast, lymphoma, or head and neck cancers who are posted for chemotherapy cycles. So we looked at their BMI, we looked at their platelet lymphocyte ratio, neutrophil lymphocyte ratio. Higher platelet lymphocyte ratio or neutrophil lymphocyte ratio indicates a inflammatory state, underlying inflammatory state. And what we saw was higher neutrophil lymphocyte ratio was related to more progressive disease, resistance to chemotherapy, okay, or no response to chemotherapy in most of these patients who received chemotherapy. This shows patients' this is also a marker of vitality. So what will be abnormal composition of blood and lymph? The second cause is inflammatory profile. Even the blood itself, the blood products inside your body itself are geared up for triggering inflammation here and there. Okay, so they are geared up for attacking the cells of the body itself, attacking the organism which is inside the body itself, and this is seen by elevated ESR levels, high sensitive C-reactive proteins, and other inflammatory markers. Okay, so increase, for example, if you see in COVID-19, the damage doesn't happen because of the virus. The damage happens because of the immune system. Okay, the immune system goes in the overdrive, high levels of inflammatory markers, high levels of inflammation, which causes cell damage. Okay, so increased neutrophil lymphocyte ratio, platelet lymphocyte ratio, low platelet counts, low hemoglobins, abnormal red blood cells, mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration is reduced, PCV is reduced, packed cell volume inside RBCs are reduced. All these composition of changes inside the body, inside the blood, talks about abnormal composition of blood and lymph. It also includes autoantibodies against the body's own tissues and reactive oxygen species. Also, there is oxidative stress which can cause problem. So this is again when you see in cancer patients, they've shown that those with increased platelet lymphocyte ratio, okay, they had 49.2% mortality compared to those who didn't have who had lower amount of platelet lymphocyte ratio. That's 36% mortality. So increasing mortality by almost 13% in those who had an inflammatory profile. Okay. Now we come to the foreign matter theory. So you know the body is like a factory. We take in food day in and day out, and this food which we take in, the water we consume, the oxygen which we inhale, okay, all these go in burning up this fuel, and the larger molecules are broken down to smaller molecules through metabolic processes, through enzymatic processes, and through digestion processes. At the same time, as you do the breaking of larger molecules to smaller molecules, you also release energy. Okay, and when the process of this metabolism, you also cause reactive oxygen species to be released, which can lead to oxidative stress and damage, which can lead to inflammation as well. So what does excess energy you do? We have to use this excess energy in the form of exercise, but because we have a sedentary lifestyle, they get stored as fat, and this becomes a problem. When you have fat, you have visceral fat. When you have subcutaneous fat, you have not much problem. But when you have visceral fat, which is surrounding your abdominal organs, that is when the problem comes, because this fat is a bad fat in your body, and this can cause sleep apnea, heart failure, cancer, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, arthritis, PCOS, and whatnot. Okay, and obesity is a very, very important aspect, especially visceral fat deposits is a very important aspect of in this kind of a problem. So this is also called a foreign matter, and this is also equivalent to what is called toxemia theory. And if you see, there are a lot of different types of toxins. So as there is body started to having the metabolism, a lot of products are produced as part of the metabolism process: uric acid, blood glucose, sodium, ferritin, fibrin, DNA adducts, reactive oxygen species, triglycerides. These are all end products of metabolism, and these are called endogenous toxins. Okay, you have amyloid precursor protein also, which causes plaque formation, which causes Alzheimer's disease in the elderly. Similarly, you have exogenous toxins. These are bacterial toxins, viruses, food toxins, toxins which are present in the food. Okay, like you have aflatoxin B, which is present in the wheat. If it is stored in very, very damp conditions and can cause food poisoning. You have parasites, you have food additives, fungal, protozoa. All these are exogenous toxins. At the same time, we also have antitoxins. They are in form of vitamins, minerals, hormones, enzymes, and enzymes such as catalase, protease, lipase, superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, DNA repair genes and enzymes, telomerase. So all these are antitoxins which are in response to any toxic damage. These also increase in your body. So now, if you look at healthy person versus obesity person, in healthy person you have a good gut microbiota, especially the microorganisms which are there inside the gut. Okay, they increase the T reg cells, T regulatory cells. Okay, whereas if you look at obese patient, there is more of metabolism with respect to glycolysis, breakdown of more of sugars because you take more of sugars, and because you take more of sugars compared to that of vegetables, you have more of T effector cells which can cause chronic inflammation. Okay, they increase the inflammatory profile inside the body, and this can cause multiple sclerosis, allergies, systemic lupus erythematosus, diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and what not. So this is a analogy between both a person who is very healthy, thin, lean, maintaining his body weight, and he takes plenty of fruits and vegetables compared to those who rely on a Western kind of a high calorie or high glucose diet. What is logical thing about fasting is you can see from animals they fast for days whenever they are ill, whenever they have upset stomach, and you don't see metabolic syndrome or obesity in animals. Forget those animals which are there in the zoo or they are domesticated, or dogs or whatever it is. Those which are in the wild don't have any obesity, don't have any metabolic syndrome because they stay healthy, they know how to fast, they know how to heal. Okay. So there are a lot of blood markers of detoxification as well. I won't go into all these details. But very important aspect of this is again to understand that germs are a cause of disease. Most of them talked about germ theory, and there's also what is called as the miasma theory as well. So germ theory came back in 1025 AD by Ibn Sina or Avicenna in the Middle East or in Persia, which we call which we called before, and they proponent that germs are the cause of disease. Okay, and this has taken up over the centuries, and they brought Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch, Joseph Lister, Edward Jenner, Alexander Fleming, and Robert Virchow. All these people did a very, very important job to show that germs can cause diseases right from the plague to the smallpox and to the influenza as well. But what was very, very important and perturbing thing was while there was a lot of germ theory just picked up by the allopats and which led to the advent of antibiotic therapy. At the same time, people also began to understand that when there is influenza epidemic or a pandemic, why do all of them don't get influenza? Or what is it that some of them are not getting influenza where others are getting influenza during a pandemic? This gave rise to another theory called Microzymian theory. Okay, it's also called as the soil and seed hypothesis or the terrain theory. If germs are the seed, the environment which is conducive for the germs to grow is also very, very important. If the environment is not so conducive for the germs to grow, then the terrain is not so conducive for the germs to grow and the germs will not grow. So this was proponent by Anthony Bechamp. And unfortunately, it was during this time of Louis Pasteur that Louis Pasteur became a great person. His theory was proponent and taken by modern medicine, whereas Anthony Bechamp's theory was kept in the back burner. Okay. So now let us look at how does diet can cause a heart disease. Simple thing, whatever food we eat, you're taking in the food, and these form a biofilm in the small intestine. These are they produce metabolic end products. There's bacterial toxins which are there in the food we eat. These fungi molds. There's fermented waste. Okay, and these things can increase acetaldehyde, increase pH, and cause release of mycotoxins. Liver releases LDL to chelate these mycotoxins, and this LDL gets oxidized. And when this LDL gets oxidized, this can lead to clogging of the arteries. So LDL is released in more amounts by the liver because of the food we eat, the kind of high sugar kind of food we eat. So if you can reduce the intake of food, if you can increase more of vegetables inside your food and reduce this intake of food, then the amount of LDL released by liver is also reduced. Okay, and this oxidation of LDL is what is causing the problem, causing clogging of arteries and can cause resulting heart disease. So another important aspect in philosophy in naturopathy is all diseases begin in the gut. Okay, they begin in the intestine, they begin in your GI tract. So GI tract is given very, very much importance in naturopathy as well as in Ayurveda as well. Okay, and if you look at the human intestine, compare that with other organisms, it is very, very long and this intestine is similar to that of a herbivore. That means to say, human intestine has been evolutionarily been made for being herbivores and not carnivores. So, but we are taking more of meat and meat products, which is not suitable for our intestine, and that is the problem. Now, intestine is just not an organ for digestion and absorption. It is also one of the largest immune organs inside the body. Since the whole lining of the intestine, right from the oral cavity up to your anal canal, is lined by small precursor cells, okay, by lined by gut-associated lymphoid tissue and mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, which are immune cells, which are very highly tolerant cells. They don't react to the antigens, they don't react to the pathogens unless they have to. And these bring about got a lot of resilience. This tolerance to these antigens is what protects us from all other kinds of diseases. Okay, like if you are reacting to all the antigen which you take, thousands of antigens which you take in day in and day out, then you would not have been alive here today. And because the tolerance is there of the immune cell, a lot of bacteria is also there inside the intestine. A lot of bacteria is there inside the stomach and the intestine, and these bacterial flora are normal bacterial flora. They are not pathogenic. They are commensals. They help in absorption of nutrients. They help in vitamin K synthesis, and they also play a very important role in preventing colonization of pathogenic bacteria. This gut, okay, this is very important. Intestinal lining of the gut is very important. It's got a thin biofilm. Below that, you have the epithelial lining, which has got tight junctions. They don't allow the bacteria to enter into this lining, and then you have the mucosal linings. So this gut is a very important immune organ. So when you have on the left side, you can see when you have rich and balanced bacterial communities, okay, a lot of diversity of bacterial flora is better, then your immune system is normal, you don't have problems. But when you have more of pathogenic bacteria, less diversification of bacteria, and then it becomes a problem. It can lead to immune disorders, it can lead to rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, it can lead to eczema, it can lead to metabolic disorders, psoriasis, and whatnot. Okay. So this is what gut is also very important here. Is there is a brain gut axis, and if your gut is not good, your brain is also not good. CNS is also not good, and vice versa as well. Okay, so there is a lot of release of inflammatory mediators from the gut, which can also have a bearing on the mood as well, mood of your mood as well as your mood states as well. Now you see on the left side you have when you start taking more sugar intake, more saturated fatty acid intake, consumption of meat, you're going to make this pH of the intestine very, very acidic. Okay, and when you start taking proton pump inhibitors like Rantac, and if you start taking antibiotics, if you start taking analgesics or NSAIDs, okay, so all these can lead to decrease in saturated SCFA, short chain fatty acid levels, increase in MAO levels, which are monoamine oxidase inhibitors, and this can increase LPS levels, also lipopolysaccharides, which are toxins of the bacteria in the intestine, and this can lead to altered intestinal permeability, can lead to production of antibodies, production of inflammation, and this can lead to increased CVD risk, obesity. It can lead to various host of other problems as well. We'll go to it later on. Whereas on the right side, if you take more food rich in fibers, rich in vegetables, fruits, more of probiotics, then the saturated short chain fatty acids will be on the higher side, more antioxidant productions will be there, improved lipid metabolism will be there, decrease in toxins like indoxyl sulfate, which is a toxin for the kidneys, there's low gut inflammation, there's better sensitivity to insulin, utilization of insulin, and reduced risk of some of the infections. So simple thing is when you see, same thing happens when you have a depleted microbiota, you have Ig-mediated basophil expansion, which can cause asthma, migraine, and other allergic disorders. Okay, this is what they have shown here. Destruction of the pairs passage of the intestine by the virus can lead to altered intestinal permeability, can lead to damage to the epithelial of the intestinal lining, can lead to production of more of Th2 kind of cytokines, and this increase in Th2 kind of cytokines can cause anaphylaxis reaction or allergy or exacerbation of asthma. And that's why when you say, some people will say that if I take this kind of food, I get asthma attacks, it's because of the reaction to the food. There is development of food allergy, there is development of food intolerance, and this also causes acute and a delayed reaction in asthmatic individuals. So one way of doing this is to replenish the microbiota inside your intestine. Okay. So how does inflammation affect the body? It affects almost all the organ systems inside the body, right from the brain to the liver. Okay, it can cause Alzheimer's disease in the brain, can cause heart disease, it can cause stroke, high blood pressure, it can cause myalgias, it can cause fibromyalgias, it can cause osteoporosis in the bone, it can cause acne, psoriasis, eczema, it can cause autoimmune thyroiditis or Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it can cause asthma, it can cause inflammatory bowel disease, okay, it can cause kidney failure, and a lot of other things can be there, which is which can be a problem because of the inflammation. What is Naturopathy talks about is unity of cure, remove the causative factors, eliminate the toxins, restore the body back to homeostasis. Now, how is this achieved? By giving a rest to the body for the body to come back to normal, for the body to heal itself. And this is done by fasting. So there are different types of fasting. You might have heard of people fasting for 30 days, 40 days at a stretch. You have periodic fasting from 2 days to 21 days or more. And you have intermittent fasting where you fast for 16 hours, whereas you eat food in about for 8 hours. Like you have only 2 meals a day, one at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Between 6 p.m. to next day 12 p.m. you are completely fasting. This is called intermittent fasting. Or it can be 5-2 fasting. You are fasting for 5 days. You're fasting, you're eating for 5 days, fasting for 2 days. Okay, intermittently in between. Or it can be a 24-hour fast for every 2 weeks. Or it can be a fasting on every other alternate day. So you have different types of fasting. And what we see here from the research studies is that intermittent fasting is much, much useful compared to a periodic fasting. So what is fasting? It is nothing but abstinence from food, drink, or both for health reasons, religious reasons, or ethical purposes. So you must have heard about doing fasting in Chaturmas in Jains. You heard about doing fasting during Ekadashi. You're doing fasting during Mahashivratri. Okay. Similarly, they do Ramadan fasting in Muslims. They do fasting during Easter, especially in Christians. So there are different regions have given importance to fasting, and the reason for this is basically to improve longevity of life and to prevent diseases. So now let us look at what happens in fasting. Whenever there is fasting, you don't take glucose. Because you don't take any glucose or you don't take carbohydrate-rich foods, there's decreased glucose, decrease in IGF levels, decrease in insulin levels, and there is shift of the glucose to ketone bodies. So you use, instead of glucose, you're starting to use ketone bodies for energy. There's increased fatty acids and ketones, and this ketones plays a very important role in cell repair. It plays a very important role in breakdown of fat called lipolysis, because ketone bodies are produced from the fat metabolism itself, and they play a very important role in cellular resistance and autophagy. So what is autophagy? We'll come to it very soon. So what does this ketone to glucose switch do? They also increase the stem cells inside the body to regenerate. They bring out regeneration of the multi-systems inside the body, especially if you have a demyelinating nerve disease or a neurodegenerative disease. It helps in formation of new nerve cells. Okay, it brings about activation of the mitochondria inside the cells, and it increases the detoxification enzymes inside the cells. Now, he said very clearly that toxins inside the body, which are present inside the food, are usually fat soluble. So what happens is, because you take vitamins, you take glutathione in the food, you take branch amino acids, you take flavonoids, you take phospholipids, and all these things can neutralize these fat soluble toxins and make them intermediary metabolites, or make them more water soluble. And this further process of methylation, amino acid conjugation, acetylation, glucuronidation, so all this process will again make them more water soluble. So all the toxins are made more water soluble in a phase-wise manner, and these are excreted through bile salts, through the feces, or through the urine, to the kidneys. Okay, so the ability of the body is to make these toxins, which are fat soluble, into water soluble molecules so that they can be easily expended out of the body. Now, when these fat soluble toxins are still there, they're not broken down into the intermediaries. They undergo oxidation, they undergo hydrolysis, they undergo dehalogenation, they form free radicals and cause tissue damage. And this is called reactive oxygen intermediates or oxidative stress. Okay, so one way of doing that is to take more vitamin supplements, or not vitamin supplements, in the form of food. Okay, and reduce reliance on packed preserved food or food rich in glucose. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. So what happens here? Detoxification enzymes. You must have seen when doing fasting, you take more of vegetable salads, you take lemon juice, which are rich in limonides, you take fruits, citrus fruits, which are rich in isothiocyanates. Okay, so all these things play a very, very important role. They break down the activated toxin into safe metabolite, which can be excreted from the body. So they play a very important role in detoxification. Now, there have done a lot of studies have been done on in mouse models as well as in chimpanzees and gorillas, etc., especially on calorie restriction and on intermittent fasting. They have seen that fasting increases nuclear receptor factor 2. Okay, and this plays a very important role in protecting the cell against oxidative stress damage. When the free radicals of oxygen come and bind to the cell, this cell gets damaged. So this is one which helps in preventing the cell from getting damaged to these oxygen radicals and neutralizes these oxygen radicals. So what are these NRF inhibitors? Mycotoxin, indoxyl sulfate, cadmium, whereas NRF2 inducers are selenium, mineral selenium, milk thistle, lycopene, all these phytonutrients which are there, breathing techniques, exercise, relaxation, all these things are NRF2 inducers. So therefore, when you see a patient going for an Ayurvedic treatment, he undergoes exercise, he undergoes yoga, he undergoes hydrotherapy, he undergoes fasting, he undergoes diet therapy, and all this play a very important role in protecting the body against oxidative stress. These ketones, what do these ketones do? So when you're doing a fasting here, you're no longer using glucose here because you're restricting the carbohydrate intake and you're taking more of fat and more of proteins here. So this can help in reducing seizure control because of the ketones. They can help in maintaining the muscle mass, reduce inflammation, improve brain health, lower the blood glucose, reduce hunger, improve mitochondrial health, and enhance athletic performance as well. So you see in fasting, what has happened is a lot of things which are good for the body, like adiponectin, ghrelin, everything is increased. They play a very important role in neuron bioenergetics. They help the nerve cells to make more connectivity. Whereas on the other hand, it decreases inflammation, especially IL-6 and TNF alpha, decreases mTOR pathway, decreases leptin, decreases insulin, decreases glucose as well in fasting. So what happens here in a traditional diet, when you take higher carbohydrate, you have glucose levels which rise after the food. Pancreas starts secreting insulin. Insulin shuttles glucose into the cell and it produces energy. If you take a keto diet, glucose levels fall, then lipase releases stored triglycerides inside the liver and muscles, and these fatty acids travel to the liver, and liver breaks down them into ketones, which help in providing energy. So what happens is high triglycerides, high amount of fatty acids which are stored inside the liver as fat are broken down now to provide energy. So this keto diet plays a very important role. So what happens in fasting? As soon as you do fasting, first day itself we can see the glucose levels coming down and the glycogen reserves which are there, which also starts coming down. Breakdown of glycogen in the liver as well as in muscle will start occurring, and soon also breakdown of proteins start occurring by the second day. Okay, and then fatty acid levels increase, fats starts getting broken down, and fatty acid levels start increasing the blood, and the ketone levels also start increasing the blood when the liver starts producing using the fatty acids and triglycerides to form ketone bodies. So 36 to 48 hours is what is there required before protein breakdown occurs or fat breakdown occurs. So you do fasting, you also have to see that you also take more amount of fat and more amount of proteins and reduce the amount of glucose when you do an intermittent fasting. Okay. And again, fasting is very important here is if you're not done fasting before, if you just straight away go to a 3-day fasting, 4-day fasting, it can cause more protein breakdown, can in fact reduce the lean body mass and can be harmful for you. So therefore, you have to always do a short fast, intermittent fast before you attempt a continuous long fast. And you can look at the oxidation rate. I won't go into details. What happens with fasting is also autophagy. Because the cell is at rest, you're not taking glucose, the cell starts making use of the cellular debris, okay, the waste matter inside the cell. And they start making use of the DNA fragments, they start making use of the mitochondria, they start making use of the other cell organelles and start digesting them inside itself so that the cell becomes normal and functional once again. So when you have unhealthy cell membrane becomes very hard. Lot of toxins are there in the cell, which makes the cell very non-functional. The nutrients can get inside the cell, but most of them can't get out of the cell. It can't produce energy. It can't be functional. So this is what happens here. So when you have unhealthy cell, you have to have, there's a mechanism called as autophagy. When the cell is no longer functional, When the damage is there inside the cell, it undergoes automatic cell death. Okay, so there are 100 million cells die per minute. So skin cells replenish every 28 days, liver cells every 500 days, intestinal cells every 3 days, RBCs 120 days, and white blood cells a few hours. So always constantly the body is producing more and more cells, and the old cells are dying there. And this is what is keeping us alive today. And this autophagy was a very important precursor. And this was first researching its importance in survival was given us the Nobel Prize Award in 2016 to Yoshinori Osumi from Tokyo, Japan. Okay, so we produce so much 3 10 to 6 RBCs per second, 10 to 15, 10 to 15 molecules of hemoglobin per second. But are we having that much amount? If you start summating these things, you should have very high amount of RBCs, high amount of hemoglobin. But that's not happening. There's also breakdown. Okay, there's also called autophagy. So there is a balance between proliferation and destruction, and that is what keeping this life inside in an equilibrium state. For example, again, an example of this one is very interesting to see is if you take 70 grams of protein per day, we also excrete 70 grams of protein per day, okay, along with urea and CO2. So what happens to the remaining things? Once the 70 gram protein is taken up inside your body, they are broken down into small molecules called amino acids. These 240 grams of amino acids are synthesized per day. They contribute to the protein reserves inside the body up to 9 kg for a 60 kg person. That's almost 15% of the body weight. So there is, though how much of protein you're taking is also getting excreted, you also synthetic amino acid pool, which can be useful for making new molecules, making new cells, repair the cellular process, and increasing the protein reserves inside the body. The major health benefits of autophagy is it is neuroprotective, cardioprotective, it helps in immune system, it helps in anti-aging, okay? All the defective damaged cell parts, intracellular pathogens, all these are taken up by the autophagy, with the lysosomes. They are completely broken down, okay? And this is stimulated by a low-calorie diet by intermittent fasting. Whereas a high-calorie diet will not stimulate the autophagy at all. It will inhibit autophagy, in fact, and can cause mitochondrial damage, it can cause oxidative stress, it can cause inflammation, and it can cause so many other problems. So this is a very important aspect, is autophagy, which plays a very important role in fasting. Okay, so fasting is one thing which activates autophagy. Other things are sunlight, vitamin D, rapamycin, caffeine, green tea. Metformin is a drug which is useful for diabetes. They also activate autophagy. Lithium, resveratrol from the grapes, permidine. So all these are some of the things which can really activate autophagy inside the body. And once you have autophagy inside the body, it helps the cell go back to the normal, healthy ways of functioning. Okay. So other important aspect which happens in fasting is, so when you're having a metabolic syndrome or obesity, the body doesn't respond to the leptin, doesn't respond to insulin. So you have leptin resistance, insulin resistance. Okay, ghrelin is a hunger hormone that is released from the gut, which triggers the brain to eat food. Okay, leptin is the hormone which is released from your muscles, other tissues, adipose tissues, which tells your brain, yeah, this is enough. You can stop eating the food. Now, what happens here is that there is an imbalance between the leptin and ghrelin, and you have a problem where there is increased leptin resistance, you have insulin resistance, and that can lead to type 2 diabetes, central obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, which is nothing but metabolic syndrome as an inflammatory state, a pro-inflammatory state called metabolic syndrome. This insulin resistance, which you see here, is a very important hallmark of all these disorders: high blood pressure, heart disease, osteoporosis, PCOS, Alzheimer's. Okay, so obesity. So all these things are really affected by insulin resistance, and the only way insulin resistance comes is by increased calorie overload, high carb, high sugar diet, physical inactivity, stress, lack of sleep, obesity, intake of drugs, etc. So the insulin is really the culprit. Insulin resistance is the culprit in most of us. Okay? And this can lead to fatty liver, abdominal obesity, more of acne inside your face, menstrual irregularities, PCOS, hirsutism, scalp hair loss, acanthosis nigricans, where you have dark spots on the skin, high blood pressure, puffy swollen ankles. So all these are symptoms of high levels of insulin or insulin resistance inside your body. So it can really manifest in different ways. So if you look at this again, I talked to you about metabolic syndrome. So I won't go into details about this. So uh, what you can say here is what is shown here in this particular thing is as the insulin levels, okay, as the insulin levels keeps on increasing here, okay, glycosylated hemoglobin levels also keep on. You can see the HbA1c also keeps on increasing. That shows that more the insulin levels, the diabetes is also less controlled. So lower the insulin levels, diabetes is effectively controlled. Now here is a very important aspect of the slide. So if you take more of sugars, you have your insulin levels also increase to burn these sugars or make use of these sugars. But when you take less of sugars, you take more of fat, then the insulin level comes down drastically. Okay, so fat was called the bad boy before. People thought that fat is very bad for the body, but desi ghee, coconut oil, so all these things are supposed to be very, very good. Now people are trying to find out that fat plays a very, very important role in homeostasis, and metabolic homeostasis as that it reduces the insulin levels. Okay, when you take a low carbohydrate diet and more fat diet, and if you take less number of meals. So again, what is really important here is you should not snack frequently. Okay, so if you are snacking now and if every 2 hours, if you keep on eating something or other, the insulin levels keep on increasing with each time you eat your food or eat a meal. It can be one small biscuit or a small chocolate or something, whatever it is. If you have a tendency to keep on eating every 2 hours, the insulin levels keep on spiking up. So as the insulin levels keep spiking up, it can lead to insulin resistance. Okay. So what you talk about here is you have to take a low carbohydrate diet. You have to eat less number of meals. This is very, very important. It says you eat heavily, you take good amount of food. Okay, you take a good plate full of food, but take only 2 meals a day. Like you take one in the evening at 6 p.m. You take next day one more in the 12 p.m. 12 noon, 12 o'clock in the noon time. So do you skip your breakfast? So 16 hours of fasting state. Okay, and 8 hours of meal time. So only 2 meals and nothing in between. That's what they say. And replace your sugars, sugar with sugar alcohols, fruits with berries, grains with millets and almond flour. Okay, and take more of vegetables. Reduce the potato starch. Okay, potato starch can be replaced with something else, like cauliflower starch, etc. So we try to make changes in your food so that it can have a beneficial effect on the body. What is intermittent fasting? Is use are you're abstaining yourself from food for a particular period of time. And it is very, very important. It is known to improve brain function. It is known to increase stress resistance, reduces insulin levels in the blood and leptin levels inside the blood. It increases adiponectin and ghrelin, which are very, very good hormones from the fat. It increases insulin sensitivity. It reduces energy uptake. It reduces inflammation, reduces proliferation of cells. It is good in managing the blood pressure. Okay, it has got various effects on different parts of the body. So what do you mean fasting? As I said to you, skip the breakfast or you just skip the dinner. So any one of the things you can do. 16 hours you are keeping your body, your your uh, body empty of any food, devoid of any food. And that is called intermittent fasting. So the different types of fast: 12 hours fasting, which you do from night to morning time when you sleep. You have got what is called brunch fast. When you skip the brunch, you skip the breakfast and you have a brunch in the afternoon, 14-hour fast. You have crescendo fast for 16 hours. On 2 days, you do the fasting. Cycle fast, 16 hours into 3 times in a week, you do that. And you have strong fast, when 16 to 18 hours daily, you do the fasting. Warrior fast, 19 to 21 hours daily. Like or 24 hours fast each fast per day each week also. So different ways of fastings are there depending on the duration at which you are abstaining yourself from food. And this has to be done gradually in people and not once for all go for 1 day fast or 2 day or 3 day fast, just like that. Okay. So it should be done over time. So fasting for 14 plus hours forces the body to start burning fat. Okay. When the carbohydrates stop. So this is very, very important, which I told you in the last slide. Okay, so the different types, as I said, you alternate day fasting. And what do I do here? The number of calories which are there, we restrict ourselves to 20% of the calories. Okay, 20 to 30% of the calories of what we regularly take. So if you're taking 2,400 kilocalories per day, you are going to just restrict yourself to 700 kilocalories per day, 400 to 500 or 700 kilocalories per day. Okay, so these are different types. Every other day fasting fasting for 2 non-consecutive days per week, modified fasting regimens are there. Okay, so we'll not go into details of all this. So what does fasting do? Fasting helps in improving autophagy, reduces inflammation, improves gut microbiome health, regenerates immune cells as well. So we know that a lot of autoimmune diseases are there. So what happens here with respect to fasting, where it is very useful is, it is very useful when you have allergy and hypersensitive reaction, allergic diseases, or when you have autoimmune disorders. So in both these stages, when your body is going haywire, the immune system goes haywire, fasting is going to be very useful. In brain, it is very useful in multiple sclerosis, encephalitis, epilepsy, cerebral ataxia, autism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, polymyalgia, okay, and useful in case of psoriasis, eczema, contact dermatitis, autoimmune pancreatitis, scleroderma, Vision's granulomatosis, asthma, migraine headaches, celiac disease. Okay, so even hemolytic anemia also is very useful. So intermittent fasting. So these are very important aspects where fasting is known to play a very important role. So very important. What we talk about fasting is, we talk about microbiome and inflammation. So there's decreased leptin, increased adiponectin. It also acts on the gut inside the intestine. It produces more of T regulatory cells rather than Th17 cells, which can cause migraine headaches, which can cause asthma. Okay, and there's increased microbial diversity with respect to fasting. When you add probiotics along with fasting and increase the microbial diversity, then your gut doesn't produce inflammatory cytokines, and then you don't have a problem. So fasting mimicking diet, there's one more thing, what is called as FMD, or fasting mimicking diet, where you do when the calorie intake is less than 700 kilocalories per day, wherein you take more of fat, more of proteins, and very less of carbohydrates, and you do this fasting for 5 days at a stretch. It's not exactly fasting, but it is fasting mimicking diet where your calorie levels are lower. Okay? So there are a lot of recommendations on who should do what kind of fast. If you are a thin and lean person, main reason for doing fasting is to reduce inflammation and chronic disease. 3 to 5 days is maximum. Every 8 to 12 weeks is what they recommend. If you're a normal weight person, again the same thing is applies. 4 to 7 days fasting can be done in these people. Every 6 to 8 weeks you can do this. If you're overweight, you're now there in overweight, you have the goal is to lose the weight as well as take care of inflammation and chronic diseases. So you can do fasting anywhere between 5 to 10 plus days. And if you can do this every month, this is important. So this is one aspect of why you should do the fasting. And adipose tissue is also a very important aspect. So you have subcutaneous fat, you have the visceral fat. So what is problem here is the visceral fat. Okay, so visceral fat can cause problems. They can cause unnecessary inflammation and can lead to celiac disease, can lead to change in the gut flora, microbiome, etc., and all these things. Whereas the mesenteric fat is supposed to be a good kind of a fat. Same thing as I said to you, in obesity, you get, or in hyperglycemia or obesity, you get leptin resistance and insulin resistance. And this ghrelin, the hormone is hunger hormone, is unsuppressed, and this leads to more hunger, more eating, and leads to more obesity. Okay? So we're not going to details. Now, if you look at fasting, how is it related to multiple sclerosis? They have shown that effect of fasting is similar to that of effect of an exercise. Okay, so it's got beautiful celebratory effects. Okay, it improves cognitive functions, cytogenesis, neurogenesis. Okay, and if you look at the right side on top corner, you can see the normal brain with a lot of gray matter density, mild cognitive impairment where the cognitive faculties start coming down as you grow older, and then you have dementia or Alzheimer's disease where the gray matter density is completely lower. So by fasting, we can build up this gray matter density. We can cause neurogenesis. We can cause neural plasticity. This also plays a very important role in demyelinating nerve diseases. Okay, so these are the various pathways by which intermittent fasting helps, reduces ROS, reduces reactive oxygen species, improves brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Okay, it increases synaptophysin levels, calcineurin levels inside the brain. Okay, and it plays a very important role in reducing inflammation, which can cause nerve damage inside the brain. And if you see if fasting mimicking diet, they have shown that the number of apoptotic cells keep coming down and these are autoimmune cells keep coming down inside the body, and this plays a very important role in case of demyelinating nerve disease or even Alzheimer's disease or multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's, to name a few. Okay, so all these things play a very important role. A lot of studies have been done in animal models, and human studies are yet to take off. And shortly, I think we will be able to do something on this over time. They also replicated this with respect to IDDM, insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, which has shown that periodic fasting has led to regeneration of pancreas, okay, the islet cells inside the pancreas, and production of insulin in a mouse which was insulin dependent before, where the pancreatic failure was happening before. So this can really cause a lot of regenerative potential is there with respect to fasting. It can be useful where it can. So in fasting mimicking diet, we say 35 to 50% of the normal caloric intake, 750 to 190 kilocalories per day. Out of this, 9 to 10% is protein, 30 to 40% is carbs, 40 to 56% is fat. Okay, so this is taken for 5 days consecutively, and 5 days a month, you can say. 5 days every month this is done, and this is called fasting mimicking diet. They shown a lot of improvements with respect to decrease in diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, as well as aging with respect to this kind of diet. If we look at keto diet plan, how should we take a keto diet plan? 7 cups of vegetables, moderate proteins, nuts, cheese, nut butter, protein which has more fat. Okay, grains, you should take more of millets, legumes, and less rice. High fat, you want to take more of high fat, use butter, olive oil, coconut oil, ghee, and avocados. Don't have a dependency on sunflower oil or refined oil or soya oil or canola oil or a corn oil. So all these refined oils have more unsaturated fatty acids and can cause more harm. Use more of those with saturated fatty acids. Okay, these are very important. So this is what happens with fasting before and after. So intermittent fasting is a very useful way to reduce your uh, body weight as well. So when you eat food, I said to you, increases insulin, store sugar in the liver, produce fat in the liver. When there is no food and fasting, you decrease insulin, you burn the stored sugar and burn the fat as well. This is how it works. So intermittent fasting, when you do, we speak of insulin which is occurring in food which you take, whereas intermittent fasting, there is a decrease in the insulin levels as well. Okay. So we won't go to details of this. We have already talked about all this. And fasting immune response, decrease in T regulatory cells, decrease in autoimmune cells, decrease in mast cells, which can cause asthma, allergy, and migraine headaches, decrease in macrophage activation, increase T cell cytotoxicity and NK cell toxicity, which is very useful in case of viral infections as well as in cancer, and reduce inflammatory cytokines. So reduce TH1 to TH2 shift. This is all about fasting, and fasting is not something which is a uh, fad to contend with. It's truly a science, but only thing is it should be done with a proper understanding of what you want to do with fasting, where you want to do with fasting, and how you want to go about doing fasting. And we also have to really identify the person, identify the diet pattern which they take, and try to bring about the changes in each person's diet pattern based on this. So with this, I thank you for a patient hearing, and I'll be welcome to take on any questions from all of you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now participants can write their questions in the question answer box. Yeah, so the question is, how do we avoid acidity when fasting? How do we avoid acidity when fasting?
Yeah, thank you. So how do you avoid acidity during fasting, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is important here is whenever patients, people have acidity, especially duodenal ulcer or gastritis, etc. So you should also understand that this is also because of the changed microbiota inside the intestines. Okay. So you should always do a intermittent fasting, shorter fasting, drink plenty of water, and this fasting with some ashwagandha juice, all these things are beneficial because it also reduces the gastric irritation and acidity as well. So even if you, before you start fasting, especially in case of patients with acidity, you start giving the person some probiotics 2 3 days before, so that they take more of buttermilk, they take more of ghee, they take more of this thing or fermented foods, they take more of coconut oil. So when they start doing this, prepare them for this fasting, then it becomes useful. Okay, just like that, doing fasting will lead to gastric irritation, can lead to headache. Okay, so and is more frequent, especially in patients with acidity. So plenty of drinking water, giving juices which have alkaline pH, which can neutralize these acids in the stomach, can reduce the gastric irritation. So all these things have to be done along with fasting.
So the next question is from Devanshi Gala. What kind of fasting would you suggest for a cancer patient undergoing chemotherapy?
Okay. There is a lot of studies going on now with respect to cancer patients. There's what is called insulin potentiation therapy, IPT, which is called as in the Western countries. So what they do is they give insulin levels, they reduce the blood glucose levels, and then give chemotherapy. At low glucose levels, there is a hypoxic state, and at that time the cancer chemotherapy drugs are known to help in acting against the cancer cells more forcefully. And these are all preliminary data. But we usually don't do fasting during chemotherapy because chemotherapy causes gastric irritation. Okay, the entire lining of the gastric mucosal lining is completely sloughed off because of the chemotherapy drugs. There is nausea, there is vomiting, there is diarrhea sometimes. So during that time, we don't do fasting at all. So fasting is only recommended after the patient is completely out of chemotherapy.
Yeah, the next question is from Niyanta Joshi. Is ketone body is good for health?
Yeah. So ketone bodies are quite good to certain extent. But when it leads to a condition called keto acidosis, where you do complete starvation, you don't break the fast, the ketone bodies are much higher than the required. This thing it can also cause problem. It can cause organ damage, especially it can cause brain damage. So to one optimum extent, a lower dose of ketones are useful. And even today, now we already have products, especially you have ketone products which are there commercially available, and people start taking recourse to these ketone products uh, instead of doing fasting. And that really doesn't serve any purpose, because when you take glucose, then the ketone themselves will not do any good. So ketone bodies play a very important role, helping breaking down the fat.
The next question is from Amit Kulkarni. What is the care that is to be taken during fasting, especially Ekadashi, where we fast for 36 hours?
See, that is what. So what you can do is do the Ekadashi fasting for about 16 hours initially, and then then you go for 36 hours fasting if you are able to do that. So when you're doing this 36-hour fasting, so you begin the fast. When you start beginning the fast, you see that one day before, you don't take high calorie foods, you don't take more sugars and all. You take in more of vegetables, starches, okay, and higher fat diet, and then you start the fasting. And you're breaking the fasting also, break the fasting with mild amount of food, and take it forward. So when doing this fasting, drink plenty of water. So depending upon the kind of condition you have, if you already have acidity, don't take lemon juice. But if you don't have acidity, you can take lemon water. with this thing. And if you're doing completely dry fast, not even taking water, that is a different situation altogether. Most of them can't do that, but that is the effects of having fasting with no water itself is not proven actually. Okay, they say that hydration is a very important aspect. When the cells are hydrated, they function optimally. When the cells there is dehydration along with the during the fasting, it can have detrimental effects. So one thing is I recommend always is to have water when you do a fasting. So ecology fasting is a problem because they talk about not having any water also. Some of them are very strict. They follow this one, not when taking water for 36 hours. So I don't advocate that because dehydration can cause other symptoms as well, low sodium levels, low potassium levels, which can have a bearing on the person because it only is useful in people who are completely healthy. People who already have comorbid conditions, who have inflammatory profile, who have obesity and all, this may not be really useful for them.
Jhankana has asked, instead of fasting, can we eat less? Is that okay?
That's why it's called fasting mimicking diet, where you do 5 days in a month, you take a diet which is less than 700 kilocalories. That also has got similar effects as compared to fasting. So in fasting mimicking diet, you completely avoid carbohydrates, you take more of proteins and fats.
Sasiratna has asked, how to avoid headache during fasting.
Very important question. The moment you stop eating food or you skip a meal, some people tend to get headache. So the first thing is to drink plenty of fluids. So that's the reason why I say hydration is very, very important during fasting. So if you are starting to fast, so even for example, now you're already aware that you every day at 9 o'clock you have your dinner. Okay, so you are starting the fast today evening, and 9 o'clock you're planning to skip your dinner. So try to drink plenty of fluids or water before you before the dinner time, like between 8:30 or 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Drink some 2 liters of water at least, and that helps in reducing gastric irritation. Okay, and that can easily help in preventing headaches.
Thank you, sir. It was a very informative session. You elaborated in simple words the principles of naturopathy, role of microbiota and health and diseases, the importance of healthy gut microbiota, physiological effects of fasting, and detoxification process with relatable examples. Being being the director of CCRYN, we know that you have a very busy schedule, but still you manage to take time out to speak to our viewers. Your simplicity is your greatness. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. A pleasure to be with all of you, and I love teaching, and this has been my passion. So thank you for patient hearing.
It's a great honor and pleasure that the president of Lakulish Yoga University, Dr. Dinesh Bhai Aminji, registrar of Lakulish Yoga University, Shri Oti Daveji, and members of management are present in today's webinar. We thank you all of them for unconditional support and encouragement. Moving ahead towards our next session, Physiology of Fasting with Dr. Vijaykumar P.S. He is an associate professor of Lakulish Yoga University, Ayurveda and Yoga Therapy consultant. He completed his bachelor's in Ayurveda and medical MD in Yoga and Rehabilitation, MSc Psychology. He has published more than 40 papers in the field of yoga, psychology, and medicine. He is a well-renowned clinician in the field of Ayurveda and yoga. He previously was the residential medical officer at Arogya Dham, a holistic hospital in Esvyasa University, during which he worked and conducted several camps for the famous Stop Diabetes movement. He was the head of neurology and Rehabilitation Department at Arogya Dham, as well as associate professor at Vyasa Yoga University. He has been trained and worked under Dr. Nagaratna ji, Dr. H.R. Nagendra ji, and Raghuram ji, all of whom he considers his guru. Now let's start this. And now he's currently working as associate professor in LYU. Now let's start the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? So, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar. Thank you very much, Raghvendra ji. As we all know that you have very elaborative work experience in the field of yoga and naturopathy, especially when it comes to fasting. That's your area, and you have explained fasting and its therapeutic applications in a very greater detail. So let me try to mix Hindi and English together so that our viewers can feel comfortable. तो अभी राघवेंद्र जी ने बहुत अच्छे से समझा है सबको उपवास क्या है, उपवास के बारे में पूरा जो फिजियोलॉजिकल यानी शारीरिक प्रक्रिया में कैसे बदलाव होता है और उस बदलाव को हम कोई भी डिसीज कंडीशन में हम कैसे इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। तो वो बहुत ही डिटेल में उन्होंने एक्सप्लेन किया है। तो चलिए अभी हम भी थोड़ा उसके बारे में, और अगर कहीं पे भी थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा इंफॉर्मेशन लेने का अगर कोई सुविधा है, so let us try to get into a few ideas. So first of all, I would like to begin with fasting, starvation and malnourishment, because सबसे ज्यादा confused area है ना लोगों में यही है, क्योंकि लोगों को लगता है fasting का मतलब बिना कुछ खाए बहुत दिन तक रहना है। Starvation, malnourishment and fasting बहुत ही confused metabolic status है। फास्टिंग कोई भी इंसान विलफुली मतलब जान, जैसे हम उपवास व्रत करते हैं, जितने भी ट्रेडिशन है, एवरी ट्रेडिशन हैव द प्रैक्टिस ऑफ फास्टिंग। सो ये फास्टिंग प्रैक्टिस या उपवास या व्रत का जो अभ्यास है वो हर एक धर्म में है। तो कुछ समय के लिए हम बिना कुछ खाए रहते, वो एब्सोल्युटली फिजियोलॉजिकल है, कोई इट्स नॉट समथिंग एबनॉर्मल, इट इज एब्सोल्युटली फिजियोलॉजिकल। एंड if you try to understand the evolutionary biology of a human being, it clearly states whenever we talk about fasting, we get so scared. But we should understand fasting is the alternate state of feeding. यानी जब भी हम खाना खाते हैं उसके साथ साथ तुरंत, जैसे दिन रात की बात करते हैं वैसे खाने की बात करते हैं, तो उसके साथ साथ उपवास भी आता है। फीडिंग is the alternative of fasting, like they go hand in hand. बट प्रॉब्लम क्या है, जैसे हम फास्टिंग के नाम सुनते हैं तो हमारा मतलब इतना दिल धड़कने लगता है, वी गेट सो स्कैर्ड, सो पैनिक, वी थिंक दैट नो देयर शुड बी नो फूड, वी शुड नॉट ईट। Obviously based on evolutionary biology we should not eat for a certain period of time. That's the actual physiological status. But unfortunately we get so confused, like fasting is something which is abnormal. Fasting is absolutely a normal state. Starvation is absolutely like it's a like during natural calamities, like a disastrous conditions where we don't get to eat something or drink something. Oh absolutely it's a circumstantial condition है starvation. और malnourishment सबको पता है, we take only certain type of nutrients, not the balanced requirement. We just take, like either we take only carbohydrate, less protein or less fat, so only selected nutrients but not the balanced diet. So that is malnourishment. But अनफॉर्चुनेटली अभी क्या हो रहा है कि पूरा माहौल ऐसा है कि फास्टिंग, स्टारवेशन, मालनरिशमेंट सबको कुल मिला के लोग बात करते हैं। सो वी शुड अंडरस्टैंड दैट वेरी क्लियरली, फास्टिंग या उपवास जो है वो एब्सोल्युटली नॉर्मल है। अभी हम जितने भी बीमारियों को आजकल देख रहे हैं, सो कॉल्ड नॉन कम्युनिकेबल डिसीजेस हो सकते हैं, लाइफस्टाइल डिसऑर्डर्स हो सकते हैं, सारे बीमारी स्टार्ट फ्रॉम कॉमन कोल्ड टू कैंसर में एक चीज बहुत ही कॉमन है। वो एक चीज क्या है कि इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस और लेप्टिन रेजिस्टेंस है, यानी इतना ज्यादा हमारा इंसुलिन हमेशा ज्यादा रहता है, यानी इंसुलिन लेवल्स आर ऑलवेज हाई इन आवर सिस्टम. व्हाई? बिकॉज वी हैव फॉरगॉटन द सर्केडियन रिदम ऑफ हंगर. एवोल्यूशनरी बायोलॉजी तो दूर की बात है, हम लोग भूख का जो नेचुरल प्रोसेस है, सर्केडियन रिदम ऑफ हंगर, उसको हमने पूरा भूल गए. मतलब हमें वो याद ही नहीं है कब खाना है कब नहीं खाना है, क्योंकि हमेशा हम उसी, जैसे टीवी देख लो, डॉक्टर के पास जाओ, जिसके पास भी जाओ, खाना है खाना है. घर में भी लोग बोलते, मम्मी बोलेगी खाओ खाओ खाओ. मतलब वी आर ऑलवेज अंडर द प्रेशर ऑफ ईटिंग. यू शुड ईट, यू शुड ईट, यू शुड ईट. So we are always focusing on feeding state of metabolism, not the fasting state of metabolism. Because feeding जितना important है उतना ही important fasting है. Because fasting के समय में ही, fasting is the only state where the burning of stored energy happens. We cannot go on storing energy. बिकॉज हमारे सिस्टम में भले एडिपोस जो टिश्यू है उसमें बहुत ज्यादा जगह है. वी कैन स्टोर hell a lot of energy in that adipose tissue, but that does not mean we should go on storing energy in a uncontrolled manner. So store करना है, फिर उसको utilize करना है, that is a cycle. It should go in a cyclicity, feeding and fasting. But unfortunately we are in a dilemma that we should always eat and eat and eat. The minute we wake up, we start thinking like we should eat. And हमारे जो सराउंडिंग भी ऐसे बन गए कि हमेशा हमें खाना है. मतलब so we should go on eating and we should keep eating. But unfortunately in a single day, अगर आप हंगर साइकिल को समझने के लिए कोशिश करेंगे, काउंटर रेगुलेटरी हार्मोन्स का जो सर्ज है सबसे ज्यादा जो है सुबह 4:30 बजे से शुरू होता है. सो हमारा जो भूख है वो सबसे कम जो है वो सुबह 8 बजे का रहता है. अगर आप ग्रेलिन जो हार्मोन है, हंगर हार्मोन जो कहते हैं, वो हमारे जो स्टमक में बनता है, ये ब्रेन को सिग्नल देता है कि हमें खाना चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए. यानी एपिटाइट बढ़ाने का, यानी हमारा हंगर को रेगुलेट करने का सबसे अहम हार्मोन है ग्रेलिन. अगर ग्रेलिन का ग्राफ देखेंगे ना तो सुबह 8 बजे के टाइम पे बहुत कम रहता है, लेकिन हम लोग हमेशा बोलते हैं कि सुबह 8 बजे खाना है. अगर घर में देख लीजिए कि बच्चे कई बार बोलते हैं कि नहीं नाश्ता नहीं करना है, मुझे भूख नहीं लगा है. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली नॉर्मल. वी शुड नॉट प्रेशराइज देम टू ईट. Obviously when they feel hungry we should eat. So normally in all the traditional healing system, वो एक ही चीज कॉमन है सब में. बोलते हैं when you are thirsty drink water, when you are hungry then eat food, when you are sleepy then only sleep. Don't force yourself to break the circadian rhythm and try to do something which is not normal. So ग्रेलिन साइकिल को हमने मतलब ये पूरा ग्रेलिन का जो रिदम है उसको हम भूल गए. इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ, कंटिन्यूसली हमें सिर्फ खाने के बारे में ही बात कर रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अब पूरा फिजियोलॉजिकल प्रोसेस अगर हम देखेंगे ना, नॉर्मली सिर्फ नॉट फास्टिंग, हमारा पूरा फिजियोलॉजी साइक्लिकल बेस पे चलता है. यानी हम खाना खाएंगे, फिर खाना खाने के बाद वो खाना पच जाएगा, फिर भूख लगेगा, फिर खाना खाएंगे. मीन्स ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम फैट टू फीडिंग स्टेट जो है ये बहुत ही मजेदार है, लेकिन हम उस चीज को समझने की कोशिश नहीं करते. even dated back to stone age, तब क्या होता था, वो उनको एक दिन खाना मिलता था, वो खाना खा जाते थे, मैं भरपूर खाते थे. they would eat how much ever they can. एक ही बार में वो फुल मील लेते, जैसे वॉरियर मील की तरह एक ही बार में खा लेते थे. फिर उसके बाद 3-4 दिन या 5 दिन तक उनको खाना नहीं मिलता था, लेकिन उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि वो मर जाते थे. they would survive. कैसे सर्वाइव होते थे? बिकॉज वी हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड एज सर्वाइवल मैकेनिज्म. पूरा ह्यूमन मेटाबॉलिज्म में देयर इज अ सर्वाइवल पाथवेज. तो सर्वाइवल पाथवेज क्या करते हैं कि दे हेल्प अ स्पीशीज टू सर्वाइव ड्यूरिंग टफ टाइम्स. जैसे अब फास्टिंग, तो जब खाना नहीं मिलता था देन वी वुड बिकम एब्सोल्युटली एक्टिव. जो हंटिंग टाइम में अगर आप देखा जाए, इवन इफ यू टेक एनिमल्स और ह्यूमन बीइंग, हंट जब खाना नहीं मिलता है, जब भूख रहता है, तब दे बिकम वेरी अलर्ट, विजिलेंट. दे गो ऑन लाइक फुल मोड हंटिंग. अगर फुल मोड हंटिंग में जाना है तो हम नॉर्मली क्या सोचते कि जैसे उपवास में है, हमारा एनर्जी नहीं है, वी कैन नॉट गो, वी कैन नॉट फाइंड, वी कैन नॉट हंट. बट इट्स अ वाइस वर्सा because of counter regulatory effect that we will see in the later slides. So जब भी हम खाना खाते, ये जो ट्रांजिशन है, ये साइकिल जो है फैट टू फास्ट का जो साइकिल है, ये 4 फेज में होता है, जैसे ऑलरेडी राघवेंद्र जी has explained. But let me just throw some light on it. फास्टिंग में नॉर्मली 6 टू जो फीडिंग स्टेट जब हम खाना खाते हैं उसके बाद 6 टू जो 0 to 6 आवर्स का जो पीरियड है उसमें नॉर्मली क्या होता है कि खाना पचने के बाद जो एक्स्ट्रा ग्लूकोज है वो लीवर में ग्लाइकोजन बन के स्टोर होते हैं. एक्स्ट्रा एनर्जी विल बी स्टोर्ड इन लीवर इन द फॉर्म ऑफ ग्लाइकोजन. ये जो फास्टिंग फेज जो होता है खाने के बाद 0 to 6 आवर्स में आफ्टर मील ग्लाइकोजिनोलिसिस होता है, यानी ग्लाइकोजन ब्रेक होके फिर ग्लूकोज बनता है. दैट इज फॉर इंस्टेंट एनर्जी. अगर तब भी हम खाना नहीं खाएंगे देन वी गो फॉर अ पोस्ट एब्जॉर्प्टिव फेज, यानी 6 to 24 आवर्स की जो फेज है वहां पे ग्लूकोनियोजेनेसिस होता है, यानी नॉन ग्लूकोज सबस्ट्रेट से बॉडी ट्राइज टू जनरेट ग्लूकोज. लाइक दैट इज वेयर पीपल गेट सो कंफ्यूज. लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि फास्टिंग करेंगे तो हमारा मसल मास खत्म होता है, यानी प्रोटीन ब्रेक डाउन होगा, मसल डैमेज होगा या मसल ब्रेक डाउन होता है. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली नॉट ट्रू, क्योंकि ग्लूकोनियोजेनेसिस में बॉडी नॉन ग्लूकोज सबस्ट्रेट से ग्लूकोज बनाता है. उसमें जो डैमेज प्रोटीन होता है शरीर के अंदर उसको भी थ्रू एलेनिन लिवर ट्रांसफॉर्म्स इनटू ग्लूकोज. क्योंकि ब्रेन जो है बहुत ही छोटा हिस्सा है हमारा शरीर का, लेकिन उस सबसे ज्यादा ग्लूकोज इस्तेमाल करने का अगर कोई अंग है वो हमारा ब्रेन है. इट कंज्यूम्स अप्रोक्सीमेटली 90 grams of glucose in a given day. तो फास्टिंग स्टेट में इसलिए लोग बोलते हैं ना कि थोड़ा हेडेक होता है, बिकॉज ऑफ जैसे जैसे हमारा फास्टिंग पीरियड जो एब्स्टिनेंस फ्रॉम द फूड जैसे बढ़ते जाता है, जैसे 20 आवर्स 24 आवर्स तक जब पहुंचते हैं तब क्या होता है हमारा ग्लूकोज लेवल कम होता है. जब ग्लूकोज लेवल कम होता है कि ब्रेन का जो डिपेंडेंसी है ग्लूकोज में वो धीरे धीरे इट शिफ्ट ऑन कीटोन बॉडीज. नेचुरल जो कीटोसिस है उसमें स्विच होता है. ये स्विचिंग पीरियड में नॉर्मली पीपल एक्सपीरियंस थोड़ा बहुत हेडेक हो सकता है. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली नॉर्मल. सो एज ही सेड, कीप योरसेल्फ हाइड्रेटेड. If required, maintain your sodium level by just keeping little bit salt in your mouth. That is simplest possible way. तो ये ग्लूकोनियोजेनेसिस लंबे समय तक नहीं रहेगा. इट इज जैसे ट्रांजिशन पीरियड, जैसे 24 घंटे 24 आवर्स तक चलेगा. फिर उसके बाद बॉडी स्विच ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट सोर्स. नेक्स्ट सोर्स कौन सा है? यहाँ पे कीटोसिस है, यानी फैट ऑक्सीडेशन. सो ये फैट ऑक्सीडेशन जो है हमारा जो एडिपोस टिश्यू में स्टोर हुआ जो फैट है, चर्बी जो नॉर्मली बोलते हैं, उसको ब्रेक करके शरीर उससे कीटोन बॉडीज बनाता है और उस कीटोन बॉडीज को 24 आवर्स के बाद शरीर इस्तेमाल करने लगता है. इवन ब्रेन सबसे ज्यादा ग्लूकोज डिपेंडेंट है, बट 24 आवर्स के बाद धीरे धीरे इट विल गो ऑन यूजिंग कीटोन बॉडीज. दैट इज वेयर ये अल्जाइमर्स डिसीज, डिमेंशिया, यानी एक्सेस प्रोटीन डिपोजिशन का जो डिसीजेस है सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम के, और ये न्यूरो डिजेनरेटिव डिसऑर्डर्स में फास्टिंग हेल्प्स. फास्टिंग वर्क्स एज ए प्रिवेंटिव मोडालिटी. एक प्रिवेंटिव तरीके से ये इस बीमारियों में काम करता है, राइट. सो इसलिए ये फास्टिंग और जो फीडिंग जो स्टेट है ये मेटाबॉलिक प्रोसेस में एब्सोल्युटली नॉर्मल स्टेटस है. उसको हम अलग तरह से समझने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. It depends on an individual, his genotype, phenotype, environmental circumstances. There are so many things which influence individuals' feeding and fasting cycle. फिजियोलॉजी में हम एक साइकिल नॉर्मली पढ़ते हैं, उसको हम रैंडल साइकिल बोलते हैं. रैंडल साइकिल का मतलब है जब भी इंसुलिन ज्यादा होता है बॉडी एनर्जी को स्टोर करता है. जब इंसुलिन कम होता है बॉडी बर्न्स एनर्जी. और जब भी बॉडी के अंदर ग्लूकोज मतलब ग्लूकोज का इस्तेमाल होता है, व्हेन बॉडी इज यूटिलाइजिंग ग्लूकोज फॉर इट्स एनर्जी रिक्वायरमेंट, इट कैन नॉट यूज अदर सबस्ट्रेट ऑफ एनर्जी. यानी given time body can use only one particular type of energy source. If it burns fat then it will only depend on fat. If it burns glucose then it depends on glucose, and it's vice versa. So ये randal cycle physiology का एक normal हिस्सा है. इसका मतलब क्या है कि नॉर्मल ह्यूमन फिजियोलॉजी में हमें ये फेज में जाना ही जाना है. यानी हम सबको फास्टिंग और फीडिंग दोनों साइकिल को फॉलो करना है. बट द प्रॉब्लम हियर इज we never get into the state of fasting. Even आप देखिए बेड टाइम स्नैकिंग, आजकल इवन डॉक्टर्स आल्सो एडवाइजिंग बेड टाइम स्नैकिंग, 6 divided meals, 8 divided meals. उसका मतलब क्या है कि until we are awake we should keep on eating. मतलब जब हम सोते हैं तब भी नहीं खाते, अदरवाइज इवन रात को भी उठ के मिडनाइट स्नैक लेना पड़ेगा, पता नहीं आता। द वे थिंग्स आर गोइंग, इट इज सो पैथेटिक। We should always fast because we should give our system a break, because counter regulatory effect जो है, that is the basic response of human physiology. For example, the best way to increase growth hormone is not by not eating. Agar if you want to reduce weight, by not eating. If you want to control diabetes, by not eating. If you want to prevent cancer, by not eating. So if you make a list of diseases, if you want to control inflammatory response, allergic response, autoimmune condition, जितने सारे conditions आजकल हम देख रहे हैं, उनका एक simple solution है. But we don't want to accept it because we have been conditioned in the way that we should always eat and eat and eat. That is how we have been conditioned. Even the medical fraternity have been conditioned in the way that they should advise their patients always to go for food, that too varieties of food. But unfortunately, eating is the only way you can reduce your growth hormone. So obviously, everybody can make an analogy. By not eating, you can increase your growth hormone. And everybody wants their growth hormone high, because growth hormone is the key for repairing and restoration. So whenever we don't eat, when we get into the state of fasting, insulin goes low. जब insulin कम होता है, norepinephrine और sympathetic activity जो है वो बढ़ता है, और साथ ही साथ growth hormone भी बढ़ता है. जब भी हम फास्टिंग मोड में जाते हैं, जब हमारा शरीर फास्टिंग मोड में जाता है, we become completely active, metabolically active. बट लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि उपवास करने से उनका मेटाबॉलिक रेट कम होता है. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली कॉन्ट्राडिक्टिंग, because whenever we fast, there is a data I will show you. When we fast, it increases resting energy expenditure, and VO2 max means general basic metabolic rate जो है वो बढ़ जाता है, साथ ही साथ वजन भी कम होता है. So in nutshell, ये feeding और fasting state को हम parallelly अगर manage करते हैं, so we can definitely prevent 80 to 85% of the disorders what we are diseases and also disorders what we are facing right now. And also we can prevent many diseases, and we can manage. It can be used as preventive, promotive, even you can say promotive, health promotive benefits of fasting. Because if you see the resilience, tissue repair, organismal function, then metabolic homeostasis through growth, autophagy, protein synthesis. Because senescent cells are there, जो शरीर में काफी समय तक अनयूज्ड सेल्स जो होता है, जैसे एपोप्टोसिस साइकिल से बाहर रहते हैं, उनको क्लियर करने का, यानी आप बोलते हैं ना कि घर को कई बार सफाई करना पड़ता है. जैसे त्योहार से पहले हम घर को कैसे साफ करते हैं, वैसे शरीर को अगर साफ करना है, देन वी शुड गिव enough time and enough space for the physiology to do its job. Do its job in what sense? By promoting fasting period. फास्टिंग पीरियड जब बढ़ता है, देन एनर्जी मेटाबॉलिज्म जो है, एनर्जी होम्योस्टेसिस बढ़ जाता है, माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल फंक्शन. बिकॉज ऑक्सीडेटिव स्ट्रेस, जैसे राघवेंद्र जी वाज स्टेटिंग, ऑक्सीडेटिव स्ट्रेस जो है दैट हैज अ डायरेक्ट इंपैक्ट ऑन इम्यून रिस्पांस. तो वो ऑक्सीडेटिव स्ट्रेस का रिस्पांस इसके ऊपर भी होता है, माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल फंक्शन. तो आजकल लोग मानने लगा है कि इंस्टेड ऑफ जेनेटिक इन्फ्लुएंस कैंसर के लिए, ये माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डिसफंक्शन इज द मेजर कॉज ऑफ ऑन्कोजेनेसिस. जो कैंसर फॉर्मेशन में माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डिसफंक्शन सबसे बड़ा अहम भूमिका निभाता है. अगर माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डिसफंक्शन को कम करने के लिए हमारे पास सबसे आसान, सबसे सस्ता तरीका है through fasting, because when we fast, mitochondrial function gets restored, because it gets an opportunity to restore its normal function, because it changes the paths. जैसे एनर्जी कन्वर्शन का जो पाथवेज है, जैसे क्रेब्स साइकिल से, चोरी साइकिल से, तो ये जो एनर्जी पाथवेज है वो स्विच ओवर होता है. तो गिविंग एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू स्विच ओवर फ्रॉम वन एनर्जी पाथवेज टू अदर gives a freedom for the mitochondria to restore its normal function. Similarly, growth hormone हो सकता है, even normal neurogenesis, neuroplastic changes are seen, even chromatin modifications like आपने सुना होगा ये DNA डैमेज में, especially जो forgot the name, the end part of the DNA, telomerase, sorry. So telomerase repair में fasting helps, because fasting helps to restore telomerase length, and it reduces systemic inflammation, genomic stability by restoring chromatin damage. उसके काफी सारे ऐसे आरएनए प्रोटीन्स है, लाइक बीडीएनएफ है, सिर्टोइन्स है, एमटोर है, इतने सारे promotive proteins है, RNA proteins है, they entirely switch our metabolism from feeding state to fasting state, from fasting state to re-establishing state, then reprogramming, then it develops resilience. तो ये पूरा process होने के लिए only and only possibility is just to fast. Again, the biggest question is, लोगों को ऐसा लगता है फास्ट का मतलब कैसे उपवास करना, चाय पी के उपवास करना, कॉफी पी के उपवास करना. उपवास इज एब्स्टिनेंस फ्रॉम फूड एंड ड्रिंक. मींस you can do dry fast without even drinking water, you can drink water, you can do water only fast, and you can do 1 meal a day OMD fast, you can do longer window period fast. Like there are wide range of intermittent fasting methods. काफी सारे methods है. आप अपने फिजियोलॉजी के हिसाब से, अपने उम्र के, अपने हेल्थ स्टेटस के हिसाब से, you can discuss with your healthcare provider, then you can start practicing the regime. Don't abruptly start fasting and stop, because that will also come with lot of complications. So जब भी हम weight loss के लिए fasting use करते हैं, you have seen like initially when we fast, people do lose like 0.9 kilograms per day, but as days pass on, like they go to the second week and third week, weight reduction जो है वो कम हो जाता है. It becomes like 0.3 grams, 0.3 kilograms. क्यों ऐसे होता है? Because initially it's because of a negative sodium balance की वजह से there will be a loss of water, so that mimics the weight loss. That is where people get so frustrated. Initially पहला हफ्ते में अच्छा वजन कम हुआ, लेकिन बाद में नहीं कम हो रहा है. We should not get frustrated. Initial first 1 to 2 week weight loss will be more of like negative sodium balance that causes water loss, and that gives excess weight loss. But actual fat burning goes in a very minimal way, and that picks up like third or fourth week of the fasting. Then again autophagy as everybody knows, like आजकल उसके बारे में बहुत सारा चर्चा भी हो रहा है. तो autophagy में क्या होता है? Auto is self-phagy is eating, मतलब शरीर अपने आप को खुद खाता है. खुद खाता है मतलब ऐसे नहीं कि डरावने वाली जैसे भूत की तरह नहीं है. सेल ऑटोफेजी में क्या होता है? जैसे ये सेनिसेंट सेल्स होते हैं, यानी काफी सारे सेल्स दे पास ऑन नॉर्मल एपोप्टोटिक साइकिल, लाइक देयर लाइफ साइकिल. तो जब उससे बाहर जाता है, उसको लंबे समय तक वहां रहने से इट विल स्टार्ट टू ग्रो एंड इट विल बिकम लाइक अ मैलिग्नेंट like immortal cell. To scavenge that cell, body has a mechanism. It's a normal mechanism. ऐसे भी नहीं है कि ये अभी डिस्कवर किया है, हमें पता चला, लेकिन it is there since from the beginning, like beginning of the human race. तब से ये physiology में है. It's a part of our physiology, but we have identified in the recent scientific evidence, through scientific evidence. So अभी autophagy एक्टिवेट करना है, तो उसके लिए अनवांटेड प्रोटीन ब्रेकडाउन होना चाहिए. अनवांटेड प्रोटीन ब्रेकडाउन होने के लिए वी हैव टू गेट इनटू द स्टेट ऑफ फास्टिंग. So normally it is a again area of debate. People do say you have to fast more than 26 hours to generate autophagic changes, but again it depends how much glycogen stores an individual has, and उनके जो एनर्जी स्टोरेज है उसके ऊपर, और साथ ही साथ उनके फिजिकल एक्टिविटी, एज, सेक्स एंड उनका फिजिकल एक्टिविटी. सो ये सारे चीजें जो है वो डिटरमिन करेंगे कि उनके अंदर ऑटोफेजिक चेंज कब शुरू हो सकता है. बट अदरवाइज इट्स रियली एन अमेजिंग प्रोसेस, like scavenging all unwanted proteins in the body, or even the damaged and dead cells out of the system. It's again, you can use it as a cancer preventing therapy. But when you see every individual, हर एक इंसान का ग्लूकोज और कीटोन रेशियो अलग होता है, क्योंकि सब हमें ऐसे लगता है कि सबका एक ही तरह होना चाहिए, बट इट्स नॉट सो. क्योंकि ग्लूकोज और कीटोन रेशियो इंडिविजुअल का अलग अलग इसलिए होता है, सबका मेटाबॉलिक जो स्टेटस है वो अलग होता है. इवन व्हेन वी डू फास्टिंग, लाइक 4 दिन का फास्टिंग करने से एनर्जी एक्सपेंडिचर जो रेस्टिंग एनर्जी एक्सपेंडिचर भी बढ़ता है, जो मैक्सिमम ऑक्सीजन कंजम्पशन जो है वो भी बढ़ जाता है, वेट में भी कम होता है. यू कैन सी इन द ग्राफ. सो fasting will not slow down your metabolism, which boosts your metabolism. अगर metabolism को boost करने के लिए कुछ ऐसा चीज है, people do propagate green tea. Green tea boost metabolism. Green tea comes with with a hefty price. जैसे अच्छा green tea चाहिए तो आपको you have to spend 300 to 400 bucks. But if you can fast for, let's say, even for 16 hours, you can definitely increase your metabolic rate. So again, people like doesn't feel more convenient with this method. So if you see the feeding regime, like fasting का काफी सारे regimes अभी practice में है. Calorie restricted fasting भी है और complete like zero calorie fasting भी है. प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे ऐसा है कि कैलोरी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड प्लान और कंप्लीट जीरो कैलोरी यानी कंप्लीट फास्ट में रिजल्ट्स आर मोर सपोर्टिंग zero calorie fasting yani without food. I mean, dry fasting or only water fasting is very effective compared to calorie restriction, because whenever you take less calorie from 2000 calories to 1500 calories, body का जो metabolic rate है उससे adapt हो जाता है. So that will actually slows down by restricting calories. We are slowing down metabolic rate. Actually, we are not increasing metabolic rate. So इसलिए calorie restriction is not a very good option compared to only fast. Time restricted feeding है. Time restricted feeding पहले भी ऐसे था, अभी ये कोई नया नहीं है. पहले जमाने में लोग खाते थे ना कि people used to eat only twice a day. They never use mid-meal snacking and other thing. But अभी because of westernization, because of urbanization, हमारा जो डाइट प्लान है वो इतना हो गया कि हमें इतना पता नहीं कि कितना खाते हैं और कितना स्नैक लेते हैं. So along with intermittent fasting techniques है, periodic fasting है, like alternate day fasting है, longer window period fasting है, like prolonged fasting period like 3 days fast, 5 days fast, 2 days, 5:2 days. So काफी सारे ऐसे methods है people do use. Then fasting mimicking diet है. Fasting mimicking diet में कुछ नहीं है, means इसमें कैलोरी बहुत कम होते हैं, means they use only pure like protein and fat. But again हमें एक चीज भूलना नहीं चाहिए, because body has a capacity called as gluconeogenesis. It can convert anything into glucose. Even it can convert protein into glucose. It can convert a fat, that like glycerol in the triglyceride, it can convert glycerol into glucose. So it can produce glucose from anything. इसलिए fasting mimicking diets are good. It works up to certain extent, but not complete as only fast. So doing abrupt मतलब गलत, जैसे कुछ लोग होते हैं ना, फास्टिंग मतलब अभी वेबिनार अटेंड किया, जोश में आ गया, कल से उपवास रखना है, तो कल से उपवास रखना, परसों से इतना ज्यादा खाएंगे, दे डबल द कैलोरीज. सो दैट इज नॉट द वे, बिकॉज फिजियोलॉजी का एक रिदम होता है, राइट? तो ये रिदम को हम सेट करना है. वी हैव टू सेट अवर बायोलॉजिकल रिदम. दैट इज व्हाट वी रेफर इट एज फिजियोलॉजिकल अडैप्टेशन. तो उपवास भी करना है. इफ यू वांट टू फास्ट, if you want to change the pattern, then we have to make it in a structured way. Let's say today if you fast, if you don't eat, if you skip breakfast, then next week on the same day skip breakfast and lunch. The third week on the same day you skip breakfast, lunch and dinner. The third week you can go for continuous like prolonged fast of 24 hours or 36 hours. So this is the normal adaptation. But unfortunately, people do random abrupt fastings. So that will leads to certain medical complications like gout, uric acid or urate nephrolithiasis. Means there will be urate crystals in kidney, then postural hypertension, cardiac arrhythmias. कई बार in a rare cases even we can get to see cardiac arrhythmias because of phosphorus and other mineral mismanagement. So whenever we want to do fasting, it should be rhythmic and it should be in a very controlled manner. लोग डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, because people get to see, अगर कोई भी एक हफ्ते का, जैसे नॉर्मल गुजरात में नवरात्रि का उपवास करते हैं, so 9 दिन उपवास करने से nobody will die, because so far the record goes for what 382 days of fasting. The obese 27-year-old person lost 125 kilos. So he has not died, he survived 382 days. So which means innately हमारे physiology में survival mechanism है, but we are not activating that survival mechanism. आजकल के जितने भी बीमारियां है, common cold to cancer are related to leptin and insulin resistance and lack of growth hormones. The simplest way to combat this disaster is just to follow fasting. Means reducing insulin is the only possible method through which we can combat these diseases. But unfortunately, ये ना लोग बोलते घरेलू है, हाँ उपवास करना है, ये सब ट्रेडिशनल है, ऑर्थोडॉक्स प्रैक्टिस है. Nothing is orthodox because everything has its own philosophy and practice behind it. So we should be open enough. Fasting is again, it's anabolic by nature because it increases your growth hormone. What else we need? If we want to repair our system, obviously we need growth hormone. So simplest way is by fasting. The people, and when we fast, the most confusing question is the hunger cycle. Yeah, when we skip breakfast, we feel hungry because we are conditioned to eat at a certain time. Yeah, when we feel hungry, it's okay. The hunger pans will remain for, let's say, 30 minutes to 40 minutes. 30-40 मिनट के बाद भूख अपने आप मिट जाता है, यानी हंगर पैन सबसाइड्स, ग्रेलिन का लेवल घट जाता है. So that's a normal phase. So only thing is we should distract ourselves or engage ourselves doing something or other so that we can manage hunger pans. Few people go for drinking, 0-calorie coffee like bulletproof coffee or other things like 0-calorie drinks and soups. But my advice is again, even the fasting mimicking food articles or drinks, again it boosts the metabolism in another way. Means it switches metabolism into again energy burning mode. We have to switch our metabolism into storage burning because human body has two sources of energy. One is the food what we eat. The other energy source is the energy stored in the form of fat. So we should always try to get into the storages because that is so hard to get in. Most of the time we switch from glucose to glycogen and glycogen to glucose. We never try to switch actually into adipose tissue, yani fat. So the best source is through fasting. So definitely we can work on so many things just by including simple practice like fasting in our day-to-day life to combat diseases. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share because I don't want to prolong it further because I could see there are a lot of queries. So let us pick questions so that we can have some discussion. Human body does not, yeah, from Ankit Sharma, human body does not store food like animal. Obviously, even animals do store fat. Body, it's same. Animals also stores extra calories in the form of fat, and humans also store in the form of fat. It's the same mechanism both in human beings and even in animals. Even if you take plants, like if you say plant, they store starch in the form of pectins. So there is a mechanism of storing energy in every creature. The next is, does fasting help for fatty liver condition? Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Yes, even in my clinical practice, I have conducted this experiment on few of my patients, and I got very encouraging results. Just mere fasting, even mere calorie restricted diet, their fatty liver condition is reversed from stage 2 to stage 1, and even from stage 1 to normal fatty structure. Sorry, normal liver structure. Why? Because excess fat infiltration happens only because of excess glycogen storage, because body converts glycogen into fatty acids, so in the form of triglyceride. So triglyceride, sometimes it gets stored in liver space, like intrahepatic space. So the best way to reverse fatty liver is through Even simple eat between prolonged hours means give some gap. सुबह दिन में 2 बार खाएंगे ना तो अच्छा है. हमारा यहाँ कर्नाटका में एक कहावत है कि एक बार जो खाता है वो योगी है, 2 बार जो खाता है वो भोगी है, 3 बार जो खाता है वो रोगी है, 4 बार जो खाता है उसको कंधे पे लेके जाइए. So it looks so folk oriented, like folklore thought, but physiologically speaking, it's so true. 1 meal a day plan is becoming a sensation even in the Hollywood. People are using 1 meal a day plan, OMD diet. So not OMG diet, it's OMD diet, 1 meal a day. So obviously, the next question, let me go to a few further questions. Most of vegetarian people are facing problem of B12. So fasting is safe for them. See, again, I'm telling you, fasting is the normal rhythm of physiology. Like eating is normal. Similarly, fasting is also normal. हम ये चीज नहीं समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. जितना हम खाते हैं उतना हमें बिना खा के ही रहना चाहिए. That is a normalcy. That is where we have fasting and feeding. B12 का कोई स्पेशल नोट नहीं है. क्यों B12 का डिफिशियंसी ज्यादा हो रहा है? बिकॉज हम लोग फास्ट फूड, सिंथेटिक फूड ज्यादा खा रहे हैं और इंटेस्टाइनल बैक्टीरिया जो है, बैक्टीरियल जो माइक्रोबायोटा बोलते हैं ना, वो ये फ्री रेडिकल रश की वजह से, सिंथेटिक फूड की वजह से बैक्टीरियल फ्लोरा डैमेज हो रहा है. सो कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड बैक्टीरियल फ्लोरा इज वन ऑफ द रीजन. एंड सेकेंड थिंग इज हम कितना ज्यादा फ्रेश वेजिटेबल्स एंड फ्रूट्स लेते हैं. हाउ मेनी सर्विंग्स पर डे? इट्स वेरी लिमिटेड. और उसमें भी हम इतना उसका चकनाचूर कर देते हैं ना कि खाना पकाते पकाते इतना पका देंगे कि वो सब्जी भी खुद कंफ्यूज हो जाएगी कि वो सब्जी कौन सा है. So as much as possible we should consume natural foods in a natural form. Then vegetarian food, people will always have sufficient B12 because B12 is there in trace form in all the vegetables, even rice, wheat, green leaves, and all the vegetables has more or less trace elements of B12, and body cannot store B12. It's water soluble, so trace are more than sufficient. So then, how does abnormal fasting cause gout or uric acid imbalance? Well, abnormal fasting in a sense, without adapting the physiology, without adapting our normal physiological process, metabolic energy pathways, if we fast abruptly, then there will be disturbed energy metabolism. That's in a greater detail of energy pathways. So that goes further into abnormal protein breakdown. Then there will be an ammonia formation, just nitrogenous waste accumulation. So because kidney will also get into the phase, because bone will also interfere with the process of energy pathways. So it's a whole cascade of metabolic influence that ultimately leads into abnormal uric acid and even nitrogenous waste formation. And the next question is, sir, I have heard that once body gets into survival mode, it's afraid it might not get food at proper time and hence start storing food energy as fat instead of burning it from, So the point here is when we do a conditioned or controlled fast in a normal manner, obviously your body will not get into, again, I'm repeating, starvation mode is different than fasting mode. Fasting is absolutely a normal physiological process. Starvation is not normal. Starvation is abnormal. Starvation is when an individual deprived of food and drink, means like during natural calamities or in a disastrous condition where we don't have supply of food. That is abnormal status. I'm talking about normal. So when you talk about fasting, body will not get into starvation. So you don't have to worry. But do it in a in a controlled manner. Don't do it abruptly. What's an ideal frequency of fasting that a healthy young person should observe? See, again, if you are non-obese and young person, you can fast how much ever you want. Like you can do alternate fasting, alternate day fasting, or you can do 16 and 18 ratio, feeding and fasting ratio, or 5:2, 2 days of fasting and 5 days of feeding, not feasting, feeding. So you can do it, no problem. So what is the right way to do fasting people with GERD? So when it comes to gastroesophageal reflux disorder or acute gastritis patients, it's always advisable that don't go for complete fast for prolonged time. If you want to start fasting, slowly and gradually increase your window period, like gradually increase from 3 hours of fasting to 4, 5, 6, so that your body's ghrelin and gastric acid secretions get slowly adapted. That is very, very essential when it comes to gastric sensitive people. So slowly, once their systems get adapted, then you can go for prolonged hours of fasting or prolonged days of fasting. Sir, I heard somewhere that should not take salt, sugar during fasting. If so, can you explain it? Obviously, fasting is the period where you want to pull your insulin down and switch your energy consumption, yani energy burning, to the storage mode. Yani you want to burn the energy from the storage. If you take calories, then obviously body will get back to food burning mode, not on fat burning mode. The whole purpose of doing fasting is to get into fat burning mode. So it's strictly advisable not to take any calories. And salt, again, it's my personal experience, when we go for prolonged fasting like day 2, day 3, we might experience little bit of like hyponatremia, that sodium loss, and we feel low energy. We sometimes feel energy cramps, a headache. So the best way to come back is replace some sodium, because sodium is again will not interfere with the energy burning pathways. So sodium is fine, good to go, no issues. So again, next question is how to prevent us from keto acidosis during fasting. So there is a huge difference between natural ketosis to keto acidosis. So whenever we try to do fasting, like when we try to burn fat in the form of ketone bodies, when our body tries to utilize ketone bodies from the fatty acids, so that is natural keto acidotic state, and natural ketosis state. And natural ketosis state stays for like comfortable duration of time, but keto acidosis happens only when we have something called as insulin resistance or leptin resistance. So especially when it comes to diabetic patients, they should always be very cautious, because they are very vulnerable for diabetic, normal keto acidotic status. So monitor your medications so that you will not get into keto acidosis. What kind of fasting by diabetic patients should or shouldn't? Yeah, definitely fasting is the most prominent therapy for diabetes, especially when it comes to type 2 diabetes. The best way to combat insulin resistance is through fasting. But again, people who are diabetic, who are taking medications, they should always consult their healthcare provider and discuss with them and do controlled fasting. Like when you do fasting, if you're taking insulin, please monitor hypoglycemic symptoms. You may get into hypoglycemia. So reduce your medication dosages whenever you fast, and monitor your blood sugar levels and monitor hypoglycemia. That's all. Otherwise, diabetic patients can go on fasting for a number of days they want. It's absolutely safe. How one can identify? Oh, sorry, so many questions. Any book to understand all concepts? One good way for fasting. I think there is no one book for the entire understanding. I think you should go on surfing some information from scientific database. Can we have fruit juice while fasting? No, again, I repeat, fasting means abstinence from food and drink. Please don't use like in Gujarat, I used to always pull their legs. They say agyaras. They have different menu for fasting. So it's not that way. Fasting means abstinence from food and drink. No fruit juice, nothing, because again, calorie gets into the picture. Body will not go for stored energy source. It will stick to only the food we consume. So that is not the purpose of fasting. Is fasting good for underweight? I think fasting, yeah. When it comes to underweight people, obviously fasting is not good because they don't want to lose more weight. They want to gain weight or they want to maintain weight, then they don't have to fast. But what they can do is they can do intermittent period of like longer window period diet. They can have large meals twice a day and they can maintain a longer window period. So that is good for them. You got a lot of good books. Okay, somebody has advised a few books. I think, I don't know, you can refer to that. How to manage excretion cycle during fasting. Normally, when we fast for, let's say, 36 to 48 hours, normally till 24 hours, there will be no such issues with excretion. Only after 24 hours, we might experience little bit of like diarrhea, like fasting induced diarrhea. That's one of the common thing. Apart from that, the entire excretory, like urine output, bowel movements, will all be normal. There is no much issues. Here and there, slight fasting induced diarrhea will be there, but that is absolutely normal. That will settle down once we stop fasting. During Navratra, many people fast for 9 days and one take lemon water. How far it is advisable? See, again, I repeat, fasting has so many methods, like so many different types. Intermittent fasting, even intermittent fasting, you can like taking lemon water is again calorie restricted diet. It is not fasting. It's a calorie restricted, because if they keep on drinking lemon water, it means they constantly loading their system with low caloric drink. It's not always compulsory that you should abstain from food, solid food. Even the drink, even lemon water is also considered as calorie food. So it's a low calorie calorie restricted diet. Again, it's good. Something is better than nothing, because we are always pumping our system with so much of calories. So we take that opportunity, that Navratri opportunity, to reduce calories. That's again one best thing. What do I do if I am served a meal that goes against my fast? See, fasting is again willful abstinence from food. Again, I think you got your answer. Whether you're willing to do it or not, it's up to you. If somebody is forcing you a food, I think I cannot help it. What about elderly people who have high glucose levels? How can they bring down their glucose through? Obviously, see, the answer lies in your question itself. When you fast, you are deprived of glucose. By simply, even when it comes to elderly, only thing we should monitor their glucose status as well as sodium status. Otherwise, they can absolutely do normal fasting, no issues. When it comes to elderly, we have to be little bit cautious. Why do I feel more options when I fast? Yeah, because it's a very interesting question. When we fast, our brain cognitive function enhances. That is what the evidence base says. Research के द्वारा ये पता चलता है, when we fast, we become more vigilant. Even अगर आप देखेंगे ना stone age में, hunting time, starvation makes them more vigilant. Means the cognitive functions become very sharp. Agar if you want to give a lecture, it is better you give on an empty stomach, so that your brain, your executive functions and your cognitive functions becomes very sharp. Because when it compared to glucose consumption, ketone body is like a more of clear energy source. So it leaves very minimal byproducts. So that makes system very lighter. Can fasting helps in develop stem cells? Yeah, definitely. Mesenchymal stem cell activations, and even if you see HSC activation, like the bone marrow stimulation, mesenchymal stem cell activation, everything happens because when we hit the fasting stage, growth hormone secretion goes high. Growth hormone is directly related to activating stem cell. Even if you take hematopoietic stem cell, erythropoietic stem cell, or mesenchymal stem cell, any kind of stem cells, they get activated during growth hormone surge. So the best way to increase growth hormone is fasting. Implication of fasting during pregnancy. Obviously, we will not recommend fasting during pregnancy because pregnancy is a physiologically challenging duration. क्योंकि वो वहाँ पे दो लोगों का खाना चाहिए. दो लोग इसका मतलब ये नहीं पूरा दिन खाते रहना है. Means they need extra calories. Pregnant women need extra calories, so she should eat wisely. And fasting is obviously not required during pregnancy. Pitta dominant. Sorry, I think I missed the questions. What are the things to be cautious during my fast? Again, I repeat, when you want to start fasting, select the fast according to your condition. Like if you're a family person, you have to have a family dinner with the your people. You can't say I'm abstaining from food and you should get frustrated and make others get frustrated. If your wife is making a delicious dinner, select appropriate, because fasting should be a joyful process. It should not be like a torturous journey. So select the process and adapt your system. Select a day of fasting. That is where our traditions always say, जैसे बोलते हैं ना कि आपके घर के कौन से भगवान है, मन्नत रख के उसी दिन उपवास करना. Why उसी दिन करना? उसी दिन करने के पीछे का जो scientific fact है, because that is where we develop physiological adaptation. हमें लगता है कि वो एक रिवाज है. रिवाज नहीं है. It is actually physiological adaptation. Can fasting help during menopausal period to balance hormones? Obviously, because you have seen hormone sensitivity gets, multiplied during fasting. That's the best way. I think we hit the timeline. Last question, how do I begin and finish my fast? Again, beginning, start with proper timing, fix the time and go on adapting the time. Then if you want to break the fast, always go easy. Don't have a large chunk of meal when you break the fast. Because if you break the fast with large chunk of meal, again, system will get into a lot of burdensome process. So go easy. Have tender coconut water or juice or some fruit or a glass of milk, then slowly you can switch to normal diet. I think we have reached whatever the possible questions we can. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share a few inputs. And again, I personally thank Raghvendra ji for sharing such an enormous amount of wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. The session was very interesting. The session was very interesting and insightful. We found it extremely informative and enjoyable. Thank you for clearing some myths about fasting and explaining the circadian rhythm, Randall cycle, uh, counter-regulatory effects, restoration of mitochondrial dysfunction through fasting, metabolic homeostasis, and correlation between fasting and weight loss, and throwing some light on practical approach towards fasting. Thank you so much, sir. It was an amazing lecture and interactive session. Let's conclude with a thought that fasting and medication based approaches need not be mutually exclusive. They can be combined, and such an approach may actually be ideal. In an era of rising healthcare costs and an increasing prevalence of disabling disorders, the impact of a self empowering, cost free, effective therapy alongside conventional medical approaches would be substantial and positive. We are heartily grateful. The therapeutic fasting is not a mystical and magical cure. It works because the body has within it the capacity to heal when the obstacles to healing are removed. Health is the normal state. Most chronic disease in the inevitable consequence of living a lifestyle that places disease causing stresses on the human organism. Fasting gives the body on the human a break without those stressors so that it can speedily repair or accomplish healing that could not otherwise occur in the feeding state. We are heartily thankful to the speakers for taking time out of their busy schedule and to be a part of our webinar to share your expertise with our attendees and clearing the doubts of our participants. We truly appreciate your support. We are thankful to Lakulish Yoga University, Organizing Secretary Ms. Sahana AU, Assistant Registrar, Lakulish Yoga University, Ahmedabad, and the whole organizing team for their efforts in organizing the webinar. We are also grateful to our participants to be a part of this knowledgeable session. We hope you enjoyed it and we look forward to see you at the future event. Till then, take care and be safe. Thank you.